Never fear, Feyre. Rhysand is here to protect you from your own horniness. It doesn't help with you being too dumb to live, but you know, a single fae can only do so much. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kat, and this is the second to last part for the read-along for A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And had I kept track during editing, I think I would be in the triple digits for all of the sighing and noises I had to cut out of these videos. Chapter 40 rolls around and it's time for the second challenge. Feyre gets brought into this gilded cavern with Amarantha in front of her, Tamlin standing next to her, the Attor next to them, and a bunch of fairies behind him just laughing at Feyre in general. And she decides it's time to be as indifferent as Tamlin, or at least pretend to be, so she doesn't give anything away. And I'm not sure what the point is now anymore, because you traveled into fairy territory to claim this guy for yourself. I don't think you can tip your hand any more than showing that you're willing to die for this person. But sure, act indifferently and see how far that gets you. But then, Tamlin actually looks at her for a change instead of pretending she's not there. And Feyre is instantly sucked in so much that they completely forget that anybody else is in the room, like, you know, the murderous queen, the Attor that used to scare the crap out of Feyre, and all of the fairies, however many they might be, behind her. No, it's time to stare at him and wish you'd be back in his arms and blah blah blah. And it's so bad that the cavern falls silent around them. You just sit here like, real subtle guys, real subtle, well done. The bit of ground Feyre is standing on gets lowered and she ends up in a smaller room that is divided by a metal grate, and on the other side Lucian is chained to the floor. She contemplates that she can just climb over this because at the moment there is space up there, but she doesn't dare to do it. I'm not sure why, but whatever. She wants to play this challenge by the rules, I guess. I don't know. But then the chandeliers, or what she thought were chandeliers above her, get lowered as well and would eventually spike and then burn both her and Lucian. But the challenge here is that there are 3 levers on the wall and she has to pull the right one to get out of there. And the riddle that she needs to solve for this is written on the wall. Now, we as the reader already know Feyre has trouble reading. She's more or less illiterate still. Though I thought she had practiced reading a bit while she was at Tamlin's at least, but I guess not enough to read a long riddle under pressure. That makes sense, I guess. Now what I don't get is how Feyre saw these chandeliers before and mistook them for chandeliers actually. I didn't mean to hit him with my notebook, sorry. If the spikes that are being lowered are big enough to get both her and Lucian in their separate bits of the room, it's like 2 sets of spikes coming down, how could she mistake those for chandeliers before? I mean, yes, they are kind of on fire because there's like candles and whatnot on them. But they must also be rather big and rectangular to fill the room completely and get both her and Lucian. But they must have looked enough like chandeliers to make that happen. I don't know. It sounds a bit unlikely to me, but okay. So the levers are marked 1, 2 and 3 in Roman numerals. Actually, why does this world have Roman numerals in the first place? It doesn't matter, it is what it is. But because Feyre can't read the thing, she panics a little and decides that she has to reason herself and just, you know, guess something. Her first instinct is, okay, I will go for 2 because 2 is a lucky number. Now, had she stopped her reasoning there, it would have been fine. But no, her reasoning for 2 being a lucky number is, oh yeah, that's like Tamlin and me, it's just 2 people. Okay, and then 1 is bad because Amarantha is a solitary being and so is the Attor. I mean, we can argue that Amarantha is a solitary being because she's the one on the throne. Okay, but you don't know whether the Attor goes home to a family or more of his kind or something. How do you know this? It's wild speculation on Feyre's part. And 3 is also a bad number because that reminds her of 3 sisters crammed into a single cottage with not enough room and whatnot. It's like, yeah, okay. I mean, I guess you have to pick something in this instance, so might as well just go with 2, but I wish she had spared me the reasoning for this. Whatever. she grabs lever number 2 and pain shoots through her arm. He's like, oh damn, what's this? She grabs the lever again, more pain. She's like, what's happening here? Grabs number 1, more pain. Grabs number 3, nothing happens. Looks up, sees Rhysand staring at her, looks back down and touches number 2 again just to make sure, feels more pain again. It's like, oh my god. I swear, like a rat in an experiment of this kind of sort would have figured this out sooner than Feyre, but whatever. She decides, well, that's the only chance I have to trust Rhysand. God damn it, I really don't want to do that. And how is this such a big deal all of a sudden? He pretty much saved your butt beforehand. He bet on you in the other challenge. You don't have any choice anyway, and from his behavior so far you should be able to conclude that you share one common goal, which is to screw Amarantha over somehow. Now, I'm not saying trust this guy, obviously, because he is clearly a dick, and a lot of the things he has done to Feyre so far tell you that he's a walking red flag, essentially. But as long as you share this common goal, you can trust him that far. But Feyre doesn't quite see it that way. But she has no other choice, so she goes with lever number 3 and solves the riddle. So Feyre and Lucien are safe, but instead of rejoicing, Feyre has a minor meltdown, starts crying. It's like, oh my god, I only won because I cheated. I'm just like, yeah, and who cares? You're playing against somebody who killed thousands of people, who tortured somebody you knew to death and keeps her corpse around as decoration, who enslaved human beings beforehand and now lots of high fae, who's holding your lover hostage. Like, who cares whether you're cheating? But apparently it's an issue for Feyre, also because she has some deep-seated issues about being illiterate. And in a different context, I would have said, okay, feeling like it is some sort of inadequacy when everybody around you can read and all you can do is listen. I get that. In a more civilized setting, I would understand how this is a real issue for Feyre, but with the life she has led so far, and with stuff that is going down at this court, I feel like she's taking this a bit too hard. And also because she's crying now, Rhysand has to go and mind control her so she doesn't show this weakness to Amarantha. And now he also shows that he can literally talk to her in her mind. Later she says something like, which again I think is just jumping to conclusions on her part, but he can only do so because they have this bond now after they struck a bargain. Whichever, the magic is so fluffy and just does whatever it needs to for the plot at any given point that I guess I should just give up on expecting any rules or, you know, any consistency within the world. Doesn't matter. But Rhysand has to talk to her, tell her that she needs to get a grip and more or less mind control her into not crying in front of Amarantha. But she completely falls apart once she gets back to her cell. This also means even if he didn't have the proper telepathy that he's displaying in this chapter, when Amarantha posed her riddle to Feyre, he could have still mind controlled her and ordered her to give the solution to the riddle, and then this whole thing would have been over already. We know for plot reasons and relationship development, let's call it that for lack of a better term, the story can't be over yet, but it really should have been over a couple of chapters ago. At this point I assume that he's just dragging out this whole thing and actually lets Feyre participate in these challenges because he wants to piss off Tamlin or something. But he later explains to you why he's doing this, but I'll get to that when we arrive at this bit in the chapter. But here I was just thinking he's doing it to mess with Tamlin, which seemed like a high-risk strategy because if his ultimate goal is to get rid of Amarantha, then why risk Feyre failing in any of these challenges if you could just give her the solution and end everything there? Feyre spends a considerable amount of time crying in her cell, thinking that she will never manage it and that Tamlin is lost and she just wants to die now so it's all over. So, yeah, cool stuff. Maybe a bit exaggerated, you know, just a bit. But then Rhysand stops by and after laughing at her for crying in the first place, he bends down and licks the tears off her face. She pushes him away eventually, but not after like the first contact of tongue on skin. No, no, no. He licks her face like 3-4 times before she's like, ugh, what are you doing? A very weird energy. And also the text itself kind of makes it clear that Feyre is kind of interested. And you're just like, how horny can you be, bitch? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Anyway, Rhysand also wonders whether forcing her to learn to read would be some kind of torment he could put her through once she has to spend every week of the month, or like 1 week of every month, whatever, at his court. That makes Feyre so mad that she actually forgets to cry. Yay? I guess it beats the, oh my god, everything is over, I want to die phase she just went through. But it's okay, she goes right back to this kind of depressive phase. She is really down on herself. I think she cries some more. She's just given up more or less. She just wants to be drunk on fairy wine again so she doesn't have to think or feel anything. So, okay. I guess Rhysand just turned her into a drug addict. Why not? The best part about her being sad is that at some point she also thinks about how she would only have a couple of decades with Tamlin if she even manages to save him. I'm sorry, but for a human being thinking in a couple of decades, let's say she means 3 or 4, but 3 or 4 decades is a very long time for somebody who is just 19 years old. And if you try to remember back to when you were like around 20, didn't you think 50 was ages away? It's not, because time kind of speeds up after 20, but it feels like a long, long time away. But now she's sad because she would only have decades with Tamlin while he would be immortal and she would be gone in the blink of an eye. And it's like, wow. Those are weirdly deep thoughts for her, I have to say, because she hasn't shown us much of this beforehand. Her emotions in this are a complete roller coaster. She goes from, yay, second challenge, I need to win this. Oh my god, I am completely screwed. Oh no, I needed help to make it through this. Oh, I'm so angry at Rhysand, I forget about being sad. Oh my god, life is over, everything is crap. It's like, wow, this is wild. So in chapter 41, while Feyre is still going through all those negative emotions and giving up on life in general, Rhysand's handmaidens turn up and escort her to get painted and dressed again. And they squeeze into a little like side behind a tapestry or whatever and overhear the Attor talking to somebody that was sent by the King of Hybern, it seems. And they are discussing the oncoming war, essentially. So the king is ready to go to war and he expects Amarantha to send troops or to join him. And the conversation that the Attor has with this potentially pigman, we don't get to see this person, so we don't know what it looks like. But from the voice, Feyre swears that it might be a pig. And it's like, yeah, okay, pig, if you say so. Pigman and Attor are talking. And from what we learned before as well, I think Amarantha backstabbed the King of Hybern, kind of, and took this whole territory of Prythian for herself. And the other guy that has come by, sorry, Pigman says, well, yeah, betraying him and taking this territory of herself is one thing, but she can't let him down again or something. It's like, oh, okay, so backstabbing him and taking this whole place for yourself instead of doing whatever she was originally supposed to do, that's fine. He will just let this slide because that's how tyrants work. They just let things like this slide. But now she disappoints him again. Oh, he can do stuff. So it turns out she had to steal some of his spells to actually make Prythian hers. But apparently he doesn't need that. He won't need spells or potions to take all of her power from her. So why is she still in power if this king wanted Prythian for himself or wanted it destroyed or something? I don't remember what he actually wanted. But it was not having Amarantha as queen there. Feyre briefly worries about her family, but she trusts Nesta to get everybody out of there at the first sign of trouble. So she goes right back to wallowing in despair and self-pity. But then, while she's sitting in her cell, she hears music that reminds her of Tamlin, and suddenly, life is worth living again. Yeah, that sounds like serious issues too. Okay, on to chapter 42. It's the evening before the third challenge, and Feyre is in her usual party get-up, painted all over, but this time I don't really want to call it dress because she's still mostly naked, is pink, whatever. And she watches how Rysand has a green-skinned fairy on his lap. She's not drunk at this point because he's busy with somebody else. But then, while Feyre looks at him, she drops this random, "Oh, he'd tire of her soon." Okay, why do you care? The more he's distracted with somebody else, the better. The less you have to, I don't know, kind of whore yourself out against your will while you are not aware of it. How's that bad for you? And I also read the sentence like it has some contempt for this other fairy. Like, yeah, you're currently sitting on his lap, but he will tire of you soon, then it's back to me, because that's kind of how it comes across. And it's a very weird vibe to have. While standing there, Feyre contemplates how she can't wait to get drunk again and not feel anything until the next challenge is over, because she will fail it anyway. But then, lo and behold, Tamlin comes to stand next to her, and his hand brushes hers, and suddenly the world is full of color again, everything is good, and it's worth fighting for, and oh my god, this is so sad. She's not even willing to fight for herself, no, but oh my god, the guy is looking at me, oh my god, our hands touched. This is what I'm living for. It's like, wow, this is so sad. I mean, even if we don't know what she was really living for beforehand, the idea that she's now just here and her life feels worthless to her without him is just... no thanks. Now onto the part that actually amused me, but it probably wasn't intended to. So Tamlin sneaks off first, Feyre follows him, and they literally go to a room one off this throne room where this massive party is still going on, right? And they are so hot for each other. It's not just like they are hugging or kissing. No. They are so hot for each other. They are about to have a quickie when Rysand interrupts them. Really? You couldn't control yourself? Not even in this situation? Not even knowing what Amarantha would do if she walks in on this? And they both must be brain dead. There's no other explanation at this point. And I also don't believe that Amarantha wouldn't have her eyes glued to Tamlin the whole time while her favorite toy or the guy she really wants to date just vanishes out of the room. I don't buy it. Like, there's a room full of high fae and fairies and nobody notices those two sneaking off. Well, except Rysand, but that might be part of the tattoo that Feyre now has as well, so whatever. So Rysand interrupts them, tells Tamlin to put his pants back on, and erases all of the paint that is now on Tamlin, because Feyre is still painted all over and it is supposed to let Rysand know whenever somebody touches his toy. There we go. So he cleans up Tamlin. Tamlin leaves. Rysand pins Feyre's hands to the wall, makes a really gross comment about how he would have given her release if she really needed it and so forth, and it's really fucking gross. Especially while she's pinned to the wall, not really dressed. It's just gross. And then they have a kind of conversation about, well, why are you even doing this? What do you care? Rysand gets really miffed at this last comment and is about to tell her why. But then Amarantha shows up, so Rysand does the only logical thing, which is smooching Feyre to make it look like they were just there to make out. Amarantha is amused because, human hearts are so unreliable, ha. Tamlin appears behind her, and Feyre instantly goes into like, well, for starters, she's struggling against Rysand, so it doesn't look like making out. It's a guy kissing a girl who's like, stop that, and who is trying to push back. But obviously she can't, because we've established that high fae are a lot stronger than your average human being. So Amarantha is amused, and Feyre instantly goes into, oh my god, I hope Tamlin understands what happened here. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's not hard, right? But then again, we've established that for just trying to have this quickie, they both must be kind of brain dead, so maybe he doesn't understand. I don't know. I've given up on logic in some bits here, but yeah. Anyway, Amarantha leaves, and Rysand fixes all of the paint on Feyre again, because like we established before, the only one who can touch her and then fix everything by himself again is Rysand. anybody else touches her, then the paint stays smeared until he tells it otherwise, I guess. So now that Rysand is done telling Feyre off for being so stupid, nearly getting caught by Amarantha, because who knows what consequences it would have both for her and Tamlin, Feyre gets back to her cell, and it's worth noting that there's a parallel between when she switched from calling Tamlin by his full name and went with Tam, like the nickname that Lucian used. She did it at some point when it became clear that she's warming to him and kind of starts to like him. She's now calling Rysand Rys, so everybody has a nickname now, and I feel like this is really not the kind of relationship where you would do that. Also, the whole, even the making out session that is against Feyre's will, even that is kind of depicted as hot from her perspective, and it's just so gross. There's so much wrong here. It's shocking. I can't see how several editors and people at the publisher read this and were like, oh yeah, this toxic bullshit, we need to publish that. Rysand stops by Feyre's cell because he feels like talking. He's in a talkative mood, and she's the only one that he can say anything to without massive repercussions for him or risking that Amarantha hears about it. That's really sad, actually. I would have thought that at least the two high fae or fairies, I don't know which one they are, that keep collecting Feyre for the parties at night, they are spying for Rysand, so I would expect them to be somewhat trustworthy at least, but whatever. Rysand feels like Feyre is the only one he can talk to without fearing any consequences. He does ask her what she thinks why he's doing all of this, and her comment is just, because you're a monster. This girl really is too dumb to live. She still hasn't figured out that he wants to get rid of Amarantha. I mean, how easy is this? Like, oh. I lack the words to describe the stupidity in this. And now he finally tells us why he didn't, well, he doesn't actually say, okay, I didn't help you out when she gave you the riddle. No, but he tells her why he struck the bargain. He figured it would make Tamlin angrier, and the angrier Tamlin is, the more likely he is to kill Amarantha once Feyre wins. I would argue that Tamlin had enough reason to try and kill Amarantha the first chance he got anyway. He didn't need more motivation for this. Which once again brings me back to the scene where Feyre first hears the riddle. Tamlin was sitting right next to Amarantha. Rysand could have just made Feyre say the solution. Tamlin would have ripped Amarantha's head off anyway, because it turns out once his power is released from Amarantha, which supposedly happens when this challenge or riddle is over. I'm still not sure why Amarantha would have to stick to that, but whatever. Once his power is released, he should be so much stronger than Amarantha that he can just splatter her all over the wall or something. I don't think he needs further motivation for that. You give him a chance to actually attack her and he'll do it. You don't need to piss him off more by playing with Feyre. He also informs Feyre that there's a reason why he's only ever touched her arms or waist, because those are the only bits that were ever smeared with the paint when Feyre got back to her cell. Because he needs his claim to innocence, so Tamlin doesn't attack him the second he's done with Amarantha. That's not how the paint works though. We've established that he can just will it back into place, and because Feyre is blackout drunk every single night, he could in theory have raped her every single night. She wouldn't know, he would fix the paint, and nobody except Rysand knows. Nobody saw this as problematic while reading this book beforehand? I don't believe that. How is this not a problematic depiction of the love interest for the next book? And you can already tell that Feyre is kind of hot for him and now starts to like him as well. God only knows why, because I don't see it. Even though he might be your ally in this situation, there is no way in hell you should date this guy. But apparently it's what she does in the next book. I'll never understand why, nor will I understand how anybody reads this and is like, oh yeah, that's a good love interest. He's abusive, he uses you, he gets you drunk, he might have raped you, you don't know, he touched you against your will, and like there's so much wrong here, it's ridiculous. Rysand also lets her know that of course he was interested in sleeping with her, but you know, there are bigger things at stake and he can't just abandon his lands just to have fun with a human woman. And I have to wonder, does he mean when she was conscious and willing? Or is he talking about all those times when she was blackout drunk and wouldn't have known? Yeah, anyway, he lets you know some of his backstory, how his dad had to, I don't even know had to, but how his dad killed Tamlin's family, and that's why Tamlin has such a history with him and whatnot. And Feyre's like, oh my god, Tamlin never told me about that. It's like, yeah, was he supposed to sit you down for a couple of months of high fae history? Because there are like hundreds of years of history between those courts. Also, you didn't really ask, so I'm not sure why she thinks that was the detail that somebody needed to tell. Because when Tamlin was talking about his family dying, she hadn't encountered anybody from the Night Court yet, so it seemed like a pointless detail. But the important part is the sad backstory for Rysand that now has Feyre feel pity and compassion for him. And I'm just sitting over here like, nah. No tortured backstory whatsoever will make me like you, and nope. Just go die in a hole, don't care. And it is only after this part of the conversation that Feyre finally understands that he kissed her in that room off the throne room to save both her and Tamlin from Amarantha. What was she thinking before then? Like, oh, Rysand came in, saw me nearly boinking Tamlin, and it made him so hot he couldn't help himself, and he had to kiss me? There's something seriously wrong with this girl. Rysand is about to leave again, but he lets Feyre know that with all of the things he just said to her, if she had more cruelty in her, then she could use this against him. She might easily be cruel enough. I mean, we're talking about a girl who can't wait to skin somebody else alive, but she's not smart enough to make use of this. I think we've established that she's near brain dead or something, because a smart character she is not. But before he heads off, Feyre needs to make sure that he knows that he could have demanded that she spent every week of the month at the Night Court just to fix her arm because she was in so much pain. And he's just like, yeah, I know. I guess we needed to establish that, so there's a hint of sense when he turns into the actual love interest. I don't know how they are dropping Tamlin out of this. Is he gonna die at the end of this book? Because that's the only way I see how you would get him out of the picture, while any of the character behavior still makes any kind of sense. But I think we've established logic and sense in the characters is not something we're gonna get. Only one more video and I think 4 chapters to go. Thank goodness, because this turned from boring and meh and I don't really care kind of story. It turned from that into some toxic bullshit that just boggles my mind. I mean, I'm obviously not going to read the next book, and I also don't care what happens in it. There is no way that anything could happen that would make Rysand a reasonable love interest in my mind. That just doesn't happen. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have recommendations for fantasy romance that does not romanticize abusive and problematic behavior, please drop them in the comments. Thank you guys so much for your time. Like and subscribe if you want to help the channel out, and I'll be back next week with another video. Bye guys!